At 2:16 a.m., deep in the black waters of the southern Caribbean, the USS Mason shuddered as alarms erupted through every passageway. Sailors jolted awake, gripping rails as confusion swept the destroyer. Lookouts on the bridge froze when a dark silhouette emerged from the void, moving fast, angled with deliberate intent. A Venezuelan warship was charging straight at them, engines howling, bow cutting the water like a blade. No warnings, no radio calls, nothing but silence and speed. The Mason had only seconds to react. Officers shouted conflicting orders as the helmsman fought for control. Red lights flashed across the bridge, illuminating tense faces. In that moment, every sailor realized something unthinkable had begun. An attack arriving without a word, in the dead of night. Earlier that night, the USS Mason drifted across calm waters under a moonless sky. The atmosphere aboard was relaxed, almost peaceful. Routine patrols in the Caribbean rarely produced surprises, and most of the crew expected another uneventful shift. Venezuela's Navy had been present in the region, but distant, quietly shadowing U.S. movements without direct engagement. Political tension existed, but nothing hinted at escalation. Inside the Combat Information Center, conversations were light, screens steady, systems functioning normally. Officers reviewed navigation logs, engineers checked fuel levels, and watchstanders rotated positions with practiced precision. No one imagined that only a few hours later, the destroyer would face one of the most shocking maritime incidents in recent years, an unprovoked collision that would echo far beyond the ocean. Just after 2 a.m., radar technicians noticed an unusual echo drifting across the scope. It moved inconsistently, too slow, then too quick, drifting unpredictably like a vessel struggling for control. Officer Daniels leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "Unknown contact bearing 210, he radioed calmly. 800 yards and closing." The bridge tightened with unease. A ship approaching without identification was unusual, but one approaching without lights in the dead of night was far more alarming. Visual spotters aimed night vision binoculars across the waves, but they saw only darkness. The ocean seemed empty, yet the radar insisted something was there. When the contact suddenly accelerated, operators exchanged tense glances. Something about the movement felt intentional, deliberate. And then, without warning, the unknown vessel killed its running lights completely. As minutes passed, the unidentified vessel drew closer, slipping through the water with eerie precision. The absence of lights made it nearly invisible, leaving the crew with only its accelerating engine signature as a clue. Tactical officers tracked the object with growing concern. "It's changing course again," one whispered. "It's heading directly for us." A silent tension gripped the room as the contact broke from its erratic path and began charging straight at the Mason. The crew had no idea whether they were witnessing a navigational failure, a reckless maneuver, or a hostile action. Then the ship finally emerged, a Venezuelan corvette, its dark hull splitting the darkness. Every sailor who saw it understood instantly. This was no accident. This vessel was coming with purpose, and fast. The Venezuelan corvette surged forward, water foaming beneath its bow as it closed the remaining distance. Captain Riley reacted instantly. "All engines ahead flank! Hard right rudder!" The helmsman obeyed, but the Mason's massive frame responded slowly. The destroyer needed space to maneuver, and there wasn't any. On the radio, desperate calls erupted. "Unknown vessel, alter course immediately!" No reply. "Impact imminent, brace for collision!" Sailors grabbed whatever they could as the deck tilted. The Mason strained to turn, engines rumbling, but the Venezuelan ship maintained its bearing like a missile locked on target. Officers clenched their jaws, knowing the inevitable was seconds away. The sea around them hissed with churning wakes. In that final moment before impact, time seemed to stretch, silent, cold, unavoidable. The collision struck with violent force. The Venezuelan bow smashed into the Mason's port side, sending a thunderous vibration through the destroyer's entire hull. Metal tore like fabric as sparks erupted across the dark water. Many sailors were thrown off balance, hitting rails and bulkheads as alarms screamed throughout the ship. Lights flickered as power momentarily faltered, leaving corridors bathed in red emergency glow. Water surged into the lower compartments, roaring through the breach like an angry tide. The hull groaned under the pressure, bending from the sudden impact. For several seconds, the two ships clung together, grinding loudly as steel scraped steel. Then, just as abruptly, the corvette pulled away, disappearing back into the night as if swallowed by the surrounding darkness. Below deck, chaos turned into coordinated action as damage control teams raced to contain flooding. Water poured through torn metal seams, spilling across the floors and filling compartments at alarming speed. Petty Officer Grant shouted orders through the noise. "Seal Frame 7! Move! Move!" Crew members carried hoses, pumps, and emergency patches, while others worked to stabilize electrical systems sparking from the impact. The air filled with the smell of seawater and burnt wiring. Above, fire teams extinguished small blazes triggered by ruptured lines. Despite the violence of the collision, training kicked in. Each sailor knew their role, moving with urgency and discipline. Slowly, the Mason regained partial stability, but everyone sensed the same unsettling truth. The attacker was gone, leaving only damage behind. As the destroyer regained control, systems operators attempted to reacquire the fleeing corvette. Radar scanned across the horizon, but the screen displayed only open sea. No reflection, no trail. Nothing. The Venezuelan ship had disappeared almost instantly, leaving behind no communications or explanation. Up on deck, lookouts peered into darkness, searching for any sign of movement. The silence that followed felt unnatural, almost ominous. Officers debated whether the ram had been intentional or a catastrophic navigational error, but the vessel's precise approach suggested otherwise. The Mason remained alert, weapons teams on standby, anticipating a second strike, but none came. Instead, the night stayed perfectly still, its quietness now more unsettling than the impact that had shaken the ship moments earlier. By sunrise, the story had already reached headlines worldwide. Satellite images and leaked reports spread across news networks, sparking confusion and outrage. Analysts attempted to interpret the event. Was this a deliberate act of aggression? A miscommunication? A rogue commander acting without orders? Both the United States and Venezuela released statements that contradicted each other, each side shifting the blame. Military strategists warned of escalating tensions throughout the region, calling the incident one of the most dangerous naval encounters in years. Discussions erupted among diplomats, intelligence agencies, and global leaders. The Mason's battered hull and wounded pride symbolized more than a collision. It represented a moment where international stability wavered. And yet, the ultimate motive behind the ramming remained shrouded in uncertainty. The USS Mason limped back toward port, its torn metal patched temporarily, its crew exhausted but resolute. Sailors walked the damaged deck in silence, reflecting on the surreal chaos that had unfolded in mere seconds. The ship's scars told a story of sudden violence, one that could have sparked something far greater. As dawn flooded the horizon with pale light, Antonio's voice would echo the unspoken sentiment shared by every sailor aboard. The ocean hides dangers that appear without warning. Calm waters can turn hostile in an instant, and peace between nations can fracture with a single reckless action. The collision was more than an accident, it was a reminder. At sea, threats do not always shout. Sometimes, they arrive quietly and strike with absolute certainty.